To get more into the fiasco known as the Ben Simmons situation, Kevin McCormick from Sports Illustrated and 97.3 ESPN.com joins us now here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And he's live on YouTube and Twitter, where he joins us right now. Kevin, how you doing today?
Josh, I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
I'm doing okay. I was doing better before the Woj news dropped and before this thing spiraled out of control. I feel like, Kevin, I mentioned this earlier. I want to ask you this where I want to start. We all knew the divorce was coming, right? We all knew that the divorce with Ben Simmons and the Sixers was imminent. But at some point, it feels like this is a whole new level of just Ben Simmons doesn't care. He just wants out of town at all costs, to a point where it's like, does this guy care what anybody thinks of him?
Yeah, this situation has definitely gotten ugly, which many predicted, which, is also fully expected after a full offseason of active trade discussions. The chatter of him not showing up to camp came out weeks ago, so this isn't really new news, but I think you put it best before I came on, is that this puts new hindsight in it when you see someone like Woj reporting about it. And to be completely honest, I think it's a little too far off the deep end in terms of player empowerment. I agree with what the Kendrick Perkins clip that you played earlier as well, that players still have to do right by the team, even though they may want out or not, are fond of your situation. Like the James Harden situation last season is a perfect example. Harden was clearly disgruntled. Even though he showed up late and out of shape, he still showed up to training camp. He still took the floor every night. And this was someone who, was only under contract for a year or two left following where he was at the time. With Ben Simmons, he's only into his second year of a 5-year max extension that the team was willing to give out to him, and he willingly accepted. So I think there definitely is a kind of rapport that needs to be there, that even though the situation isn't great, that, just sitting out and kind of taking your ball and going home is not the proper way to deal with this.
At what point also do we have to admit that everything that we thought we knew might not be 100% true, because of the fact that, let's be realistic, we thought Ben Simmons was going to be a certain individual, right? Number 1 overall pick, high basketball IQ, works with LeBron James' people. And it seems like nothing about LeBron has rubbed off on this guy. Being a number 1 overall pick is starting to look like basically almost every number 1 overall pick is basically almost like a shoulder shrug at this point in the NBA. And the basketball IQ doesn't seem to match his personal life IQ. So, how much of Ben Simmons and who he is maybe just kind of been a facade, a fugazi?
I feel like that's kind of a tightrope to walk on, because we've talked about this before, that it's not necessarily fair to a player when you throw the next LeBron or the next Magic Johnson tag on them. I think that just because Ben Simmons has that limitless potential, while he might not meet it, you're also hitting very steep expectations when you're comparing him to guys like LeBron James and Magic Johnson, who are viewed as, two of the top 5 to 6 guys that have ever played the sport ever. So I think it's tough to say of what we know and what we don't know. Obviously, people want to throw around the bust thing. Ben Simmons is far from a bust. He's still a very good basketball player, but I think coming into his NBA career, people might have expected him as this kind of hard worker and someone that wants to grow and wants to, fulfill all that limitless potential, to where looking at it now, you may think differently after seeing the minimal development, still no jump shooting in year 5. And now this whole situation, to where once things didn't go his way, now he wants to pack up everything and leave and never return.
You're 100% right. He's not a bust. Okay, busts don't become 3-time All-Stars and 2-time NBA defensive first teams. You're 100% right. Anybody who thinks that he's a bust or a waste is completely irrational. But what Ben Simmons is the other part of what you said. He doesn't have the desire to be great. How many times have we heard him, Kevin, and I ask you this, you've been on many media calls, and now in the Zoom world, you and about 200 people end up on these Zoom calls, and only like 5 you get questions in there. But, it's a deal where how many times Ben Simmons has been asked about the free throw shooting, about the three-point shooting, about growing his game, and his answer's always been, I'm a 3-time All-Star. Like, the dude runs off his resume as an answer instead of admitting that, hey, I got to be better, I got to play better, He never does that, Kevin.
Yeah, and it's why you see people like Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley, really ride into him with situations like this because Ben Simmons has all of the tools to be great. There's a reason why heading into his NBA career, he had the comparisons to LeBron James, to Magic Johnson. He has all the tools, all the skill set. He's still a phenomenal passer, still a phenomenal defender. There are things that he does at an elite level, but there was never, like you said, that desire to grow his game to where he could be inserted to, like, if he were to continue and have that desire of like a Joel Embiid who has worked tirelessly to put himself in the upper echelon of NBA superstar, Ben Simmons has all the physical and, God-given abilities to be a top 10 guy in this league right now. But just the fact that he's decided to rest on his laurels, and like you said, following Game 7 against the Atlanta Hawks, when he was asked about his free throw shooting, he wanted to talk about his defense on Trae Young, the way he facilitated, which, is good in his own right. But, those shortcomings were visibly there, and it's things he don't want to address. And he's just so intent on resting on his laurels and what got him to the NBA that he doesn't seem that intent or that focused on adding to himself and becoming greater.
Kevin McCormick joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN at Kevin MCC NBA on Twitter. Of course, you can check out all of his work over at SI.com and over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Now, with all that being said, somebody's got to do something now, right? Now it's, it's like playing chicken, right? Who's gonna ditch first, right? Are the Sixers going to do something? Is Ben going to do something? Because it seems like both sides are pretty entrenched for very different reasons, right? It's the Sixers are entrenched because they're not going to trade him for a bag of basketballs. Ben Simmons is entrenched because he doesn't want to be in Philadelphia. But somebody's got to do something at some point for this situation to move on, because can the Sixers win in the regular season without Ben Simmons? Yes. But can they win long term without the assets in return in a trade for Ben Simmons? I don't think so.
That's another interesting thing to look at, because if the Sixers can stay afloat, in reality, things will get more serious. If this is still going on towards the trade deadline, God only knows how the city of Philadelphia is going to look, but that's when the real thing kicks in, because post-trade deadline, obviously, a deal cannot be done, and you'd be riding into the playoffs with him still sitting out. So I think when you have pieces like Joel Embiid, like Tobias Harris, Tyrese Maxey, Matisse Thybulle, there's young pieces there to where I think the Sixers could stay competitive early in the regular season. But I agree, there will eventually be a time where either side will need to blink, and seeing the way that Daryl Morey has held firm on not wanting to get a deal done just for the sake of getting it done. He wants that piece that's going to complement Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris to form that big three to compete with Milwaukee, Brooklyn, Miami. The Eastern Conference has kind of shoved all in. You have steep competition. So that is why Morey has remained firm on that high asking price. And, if that deal doesn't come about, Morey seems more than intent on staying firm. But I agree, there will eventually need to hit that point where one side needs to blink. And I think the very last case scenario would be around that trade deadline, where it's hitting the point of, are we dumping Ben Simmons now, or are we keeping this cloud over our heads as we get ready for a postseason push?
Kevin, what about the other side of the coin? Obviously, in order for you to make a trade, another team has to make an offer, right? At what point does another team say, I'm not going to worry about all the other stuff, I need to make this deal for X, Y, Z? Because to me, if I'm another NBA team, I want to know, Ben Simmons, according to Rich Paul, as he told Jay Williams, we played the cut earlier, wants to be anywhere but Philadelphia. That sounds great in theory, but let's be realistic. If anybody in their right mind listed all the NBA cities, Sacramento and Minnesota, or Minneapolis, Minnesota, are not exactly high on the list of destinations, right? So Ben Simmons can say, I want to be anywhere but if you're a GM of a team that has trouble getting free agents, has trouble getting stars in, Are you really confident that Ben actually is going to want to stay at your place?
I think that adds to the discussion of, does a team want to put up with this because of seeing the way he's handled this offseason? Like I said at the beginning, Ben Simmons is still under contract for 4 more years. So say if he's traded to a Sacramento or a Minnesota, like you mentioned, and he's disgruntled again, 2 years from now, if you're the team that acquires Ben Simmons, do you want to be the team handling this entire situation if he becomes, unintent of his situation again and wants to be dealt again? So it is very tricky, but I think a team might blink and take him on, and I think Sacramento is a very interesting one because when you have these teams who are pressured by their front offices and their ownerships to get things done or maybe end a postseason drought in terms of Sacramento Kings, while Ben Simmons may have his shortcomings, the guy is still a floor raiser to any other team in the NBA right now. So I think if there's a fringe playoff team that is really dying to get back into the postseason after years of being away, that they might see Ben Simmons as a guide to getting them there. And Raja Bell actually talked about this recently on a podcast for The Ringer of, if you're Sacramento, Ben Simmons is perfect in the sense of he could help you end that postseason drought. He might not be a guy that can help win you, be like a top guy on a championship team, but he can get you to the playoffs. And a team like Sacramento, that's all they're looking for right now. So he's a guy that is going to bring attention. He's a multi-time All-Star. He'll be in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. So I think a team that is looking for more buzz in its direction and is trying to raise its floor and help to end their postseason drought, that Ben Simmons might be an avenue to that.
Kevin, is Ben Simmons going to create a situation where people are going to look at him weird around the league moving forward? Because we've seen guys want out of town before, but Harden still showed up in Houston, right? Durant still played his final season with the Warriors before he hit the road, as everyone thought he was going to in free agency, right? Anthony Davis actually was on the sidelines, just not playing for the Pelicans, right? Like, we've seen guys want to get out before, but they've never been so like, I'm not even showing up. I mean, he's pulling the Le'Veon Bell from the NFL card. Like, I'll sit out for the whole year if I have to, right? It was all how bad that turned out for Le'Veon Bell. So is there maybe a situation where players around the league are going to maybe treat Ben differently moving forward?
I think so, and I think that whatever team eventually acquires him, there is going to be some growing pains and maybe some clouded judgment in there, because seeing how all this is handled, it's going to be one of those, he's on our team now and everything might be fine and dandy, but what happens when things don't start to go his way? Are we going to have to deal with the round two of that? Players might tread lightly around him for not wanting to, anger or cause the situation that might be the straw that breaks the camel's back. So I would agree to that. There definitely might be some uneasiness between players around the league, and more importantly, wherever he ends up when all this ends.
Kevin, one more for you. Appreciate you jumping on here. Game night on 97.3 ESPN at Kevin MCC NBA on Twitter for all of his Sixers and NBA coverage. Would the Sixers report next week for training camp, which I can't believe that in of itself is coming up that quickly. I mean, it's just wild how this month has flown by. When you look at it, how much is this Ben Simmons thing going to be a cloud that hangs over this team? Because I know that people are going to ask Doc, if Morey speaks, the players about it, and they're not going to want to hear it, but they're going to have to deal with it. How much is this cloud going to affect this team? Because we've seen in the past, certain teams, they can handle the drama. Certain teams, they can't handle the drama.
I think it's going to be a humongous cloud over training camp because, like you said, it's all people want to hear about right now. It's the main story. This Ben Simmons saga has taken over the NBA offseason in a sense of, and also we've heard very little from actual players. We've seen all the rumors and the reports, but we don't know where that's all coming from. So now people will want the fresh insight of, they want to hear Doc Rivers' opinion. They want to hear Joel Embiid's opinion. They want to hear Tobias Harris. Even a young player like Tyrese Maxey, who has spent the summer with Ben Simmons, I think that is someone that could be greatly affected by all this because he's been so connected to Ben. People know that they've been together training all offseason. So it is going to be a very large cloud that hangs over their heads heading into training camp because it still is, kind of the story as the regular season approaches.
Kevin, hopefully next time we talk, it'll be under better circumstances because I feel like the Ben Simmons thing has become just this scourge on all of our sanities at this point. So hopefully next time you and I talk, it'll be because Ben Simmons was traded or because we have some wonderful basketball to talk about, not because Ben Simmons is causing more drama than anybody on planet Earth by not actually talking himself.
That'd be great, but I'm not going to get my hopes up.
Right, exactly. Check out all of his coverage, Kevin McCormick, SI.com, 97.3 ESPN.com. They joined us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Kevin, great stuff today. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon, Josh. Have a good one.